Match each statement with the correct person A to G. Nota bene. You may use any letter more than once. MB means nota bene. This nota bene means here that you may use any letter more than once and you don't have to use all the letters. Okay, let's start here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 statements, and we have the list of people here. The most important thing is that you need to see. Firstly, you read the statements, then you read the people, then you go to the text to check. Usually you have them as synonyms or as something comprehensive. Let's read the statements. Number 1. Current conservation concerns are focused on a broad range of problems. Number 2. Conserving land is too expensive for farmers. Number 3. Holding farmers responsible for land misuse makes no sense. Number 4. Australia should review its import or export practices. Number 5. More conservation funds means related to money, should be put into helpful practical projects. Number 6. Much of the land in Australia is unspoilt. Number 7. Whether research can help solve conservation problems. Number 8. Those involved in conservation are working together more efficiently than before. List of people. A. Jason Alexandra. B. Robert Hadler. C. Dane Grades. D. Helen Alexander. E. Neil Clark. F. Michael Pittman. G. Steve Martin. Okay, now we will move here to the text. Australia's growing disaster. Let's start reading and answering. Okay, now farming is threatening to destroy the soil and native flora and fauna over vast areas of Australia. What price should be put on conservation? Australia's National Greenhouse Gas Inventory Committee estimates that burning wood from cleared forests accounts for about 30% of Australia's emissions of carbon dioxide, or 156 million tons a year, and water tables are rising beneath cleared land. In the Western Australian wheat belt, estimates suggest that water is rising by up to 1 meter a year. The land is becoming waterlogged and unproductive or is being poisoned by salt, which is brought to the surface. The Australian Conservation Foundation (ACF) reckons that 33 million hectares have been degraded by salination. The federal government estimates the loss in production from salinity at $2 million a year. That's the first one. I see nothing related to people, or let's say to scientists. Okay, now let's move to the next paragraph to see. According to Jason Alexandra, okay, there is a name called Jason Alexandra, which is A in the list of people. Let's see if any of these statements related to it. According to Jason Alexandra of the ACF, this list of rules is evidence that Australia is depleting its resources by trading agricultural commodities for manufactured goods. In effect, it sells topsoil for technologies that will be worn out or redundant in a few years. Okay, let's reread it. This list of rules is evidence that Australia is depleting its resources by trading agricultural commodities. We notice here in number 4, Australia should review its import or export practices. And here it says Australia is depleting its resources by trading agricultural commodities. A trade, as we know, a trade. A trade means import and export. So, in this case, import and export means a trade, so that means the answer will be Jason Alexandra. Jason Alexandra, let's see, Jason Alexandra is A. So, we will go immediately to number 4 and put it as A. So, 4 is A. Let's move on. Let's move on here. The country needs to get away from the colonial mentality of exploiting resources and adopt agricultural practices suited to Australian conditions, he says. Robert Hadler. So, we need to focus here. Robert Hadler of the National Farmers Federation, NFF, does not deny that there is a problem, but says that it is illegal to blame farmers. Until the early 1980s, farmers were given tax incentives to clear land because that was what people wanted. Okay. Let's reread Robert Hadler here. Robert Hadler of the National Farmers Federation, NFF, does not deny that there is a problem, but says that it is illegal to blame farmers. It's illogical to blame farmers. Let's read number 3. Holding farmers responsible for land misuse makes no sense. It's illogical to blame farmers. Makes no sense. Illogical. Holding farmers responsible, that means it's illogical to blame farmers. So, number 3 will be Robert Hadler, and Robert Hadler is B. So the answer will be Robert Hadler here. Okay, let's move on. Here. Let's continue. Until the early 1980s, farmers were given tax incentives to clear land because that was what people wanted. If farmers are given tax breaks to manage land sustainably, they will do so. Hadler argues that 2 reports on land clearance do not say anything which was not known before. Australia is still better off than many other developed countries, says Dean Crates. Okay, now we will see Dean Crates. Let's reread. Australia is still better off than many other developed countries, says Dean Crates, an ecologist of the CSIRO, the National Research Organization. A lot of the country is still naturally pristine. Okay, pristine means not used, unspoiled, which means here, number 6, much of the land in Australia is unspoiled, and here we have a pristine. A lot of the country is still naturally pristine. So number 6 will be Dean Crates. Okay, let's go on. He says it's not transformed like Europe, where almost nothing that is left is natural. Crates, who analyzed the satellite photographs for the second land clearance report, argues that there is now better cooperation between Australian scientists, government officials, and farmers than in the past. Okay. Number 8 says, those involved in conservation are working together. There is now better cooperation. That means are working together more efficiently than before. Okay, there's cooperation, Australian scientists, government officials, and farmers than in the past. And here it says are working together more efficiently than before. So number 8 will be also Dean Grace. For this reason, you need to understand the sentence that the scientist or the person says in order to be able to link the statement to it. And also you need to have a range of vocabularies to be able to match the synonyms together. This is really important here. Let's go on. Let's move on here. But the vulnerable state of the land is now widely understood, and across Australia, schemes have started for promoting environment-friendly farming. In 1989, Prime Minister Bob Hawke set up Care, a network of more than 2,000 regional conservation groups. About 30% of landholders are members. It's become a very significant social movement, says Helen Alexander. Okay, now we have Helen Alexander. We need to check Helen Alexander here. Let's repeat. It has become a very significant social movement, says Helen Alexander from the National Land Care Council. We started out worrying not much more than erosion and the replanting of the trees, but it has grown much more diverse and sophisticated. Okay. Number 1 says current conservation concerns are focused on a broad range of problems. Current conservation concerns are focused on. We started out worrying about. That means the current conservation concerns. Okay, and the focus is on. About not much more than erosion. This is a problem. And the replanting of trees, another problem. But it has grown much more diverse and sophisticated. So that means we have a range of problems here. So number 1 will be Helen Alexander. This is number 1, Helen Alexander. For the reason, because they made it comprehensive. They did not say or mention the word problem or the synonym of it, but they explained it. So that means they gave a comprehensive explanation for the statement here. Now we move to the next paragraph. The next paragraph says, but the bugbear of all these conservation efforts is money. Landcare's budget is $110 million a year, of which only $6 million goes to farmers. Neil Clark here. Let's see Neil Clark. Neil Clark, an agricultural consultant from Bendigo in Victoria, says that farmers are not getting enough. Okay, farmers are not getting enough. I've read this expression. Let me see. 5 says, more conservation funds should be put into helpful practical projects. Okay. 7, no, 7, it's not talking about this one. Let's see. 2, okay, let's see. 2, no, 2 is not related to this one. Let's keep on reading. Let's keep on reading here. Okay. Farmers may want to make more efficient use of water and nutrients and embrace more sustainable practices, but it all costs money and they just don't have the spare funds. Yes, number 5. More conservation funds should be put into helpful practical projects. Here they are talking about projects. Farmers may want to make more efficient use of water and nutrients and embrace more sustainable practices. That means projects. But it all costs money and they just don't have the spare funds. More conservation funds should be put into helpful practical projects. So number 5 will be nail clock. Let's read on. Let's keep on reading, sorry. Clark also says scientists are taking too large a share of the money for conservation. Many problems posed by the agricultural to the environment have been researched to death, he says. We need to divert the money for a while into getting the solutions into place. Australia's chief scientist Michael Pittman disagrees. Okay, he says that science is increasingly important. Meteorologists, for example, are becoming confident about predicting events. Okay, he's talking about the weather here. He's talking about the weather, but we still miss one here. Number 2, conserving land is too expensive for farmers. Yes, here. Let's go back to Nail Clock when he talked about the money. Scientists are taking too large share of the money for conservation. Conserving land is too expensive for farmers, so number 2 will be Nail Clock 2. Now, let's go back to Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman. Number 7, weather research can help solve conservation problems. Yes, because Michael Pittman says, he says that science is increasingly important. Meteorologists, for example, are becoming confident about predicting events which cause droughts in Australia. So, that's the end of our explanation for today. Wish that you got the benefit here and wish you all the best. Well, let me repeat the explanation here. When we have something related to the statements to which person is saying it, you need to check 2 things. Firstly, before checking 2 things, firstly, you need to read the statements and read the people to understand the statements. Secondly, to look for synonyms. If you don't have synonyms, that means it's comprehensive. It's comprehensively explained. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best. In 5 minutes from now, I'm going to explain punctuation for writing. We come to the end of our lecture for today. That was Mr. Haidar Qasir with you.